Russia controls almost all of the Luhansk region, 79% of Donetsk, 74% of Zaporizhzhia, and 76% of Kherson, the Russian military reported on Saturday. According to Associated Press, Gen. Valery Gerasimov, chief of the General Staff of Russia's armed forces, claimed that Russian strikes are aimed exclusively at Ukrainian military facilities. Russian airstrikes on Friday night hit Yuzhmash and KB Pivdenne in Dnipro as well as Motor Sich in Zaporizhzhia and the Pavlohrad Chemical Plant, he claimed.
В настоящее время нашими вооруженными силами освобождено 99,7 территории Луганской Народной Республики. Осталось менее 60 квадратных километров. 79% территории Донецкой Народной Республики под контролем российских войск находится 74% Запорожской и 76% Херсонской областей. Группировкой войск «Север» после разгрома противника и ликвидации его вклинения на территорию Курской области выполняет задачу по созданию зоны безопасности. В настоящее время в Сумской области под контроль наших войск перешли 210 квадратных километров территории и 13 населенных пунктов. По плану Генерального штаба продолжается целенаправленное нанесение массированных огневых ударов исключительно по военным объектам и объектам военно-промышленного комплекса Украины. За весенне-летний период такие удары были нанесены по 76 важным объектам. Приоритет отдается поражению предприятий по производству ракетных комплексов и беспилотных летательных аппаратов большой дальности. 28 августа в Киеве поражены предприятия ракетной и авиационной промышленности Украины, спецоборонмаш, Киевский радиозавод, Укрспецсистем и Samsung Украины, производящие комплектующие к оперативно-тактическим ракетным комплексам Сапсан, Гром-2 и ударным беспилотным летательным аппаратом, а также авиабазы Староконстантинов, Васильков и Коломыя. Сегодня ночью нанесен еще один результативный удар по объектам на предприятиях Yuzhmash и КБ имени Янгеля в Днепропетровске и Motor Sich в Запорожье, а также по сборочным цехам Павлоградского химического завода, осуществляющим производство двигателей, боевых частей и топлива для ракет, а также систем управления для беспилотных летательных аппаратов. Кроме того, поражены авиационная техника и объекты инфраструктуры на 10 военных аэродромах.
Ukraine has its own long-range missiles. Among them are the Flamingo, with a reported range of about 3,000 kilometers, and the so-called Long Neptune, the first image of which may have lit up quite recently. It is assumed that its range is about 1,000 kilometers. Such a range allows Ukraine to strike at the capital of Russia, Moscow, as Russian propagandists like to call the decision-making center. However, Anton Zemliany, a senior analyst at the Ukrainian Center for Security and Cooperation, is sure that such strikes are not advisable. He said this in a commentary to Telegraph. Moscow and its satellite cities have a large number of military installations, but at the same time, it is one of the most protected regions of Russia, on par with Vladimir Putin's dacha in Valdai. This is the reason why Moscow is so rarely attacked. Ukrainian efforts are focused on maximizing the effectiveness of strikes, the expert says. There are many targets on the territory of the Russian Federation that Moscow is unable to cover with its air defenses. For example, the same Ust-Luga, an important facility, but the Russians did not find enough means to cover it. Anton Zemliany says, if a strike on Moscow is planned, such an operation will be multi-level. According to the analyst, the main task is to bypass the Russian echeloned air defense system so that drones and missiles reach their target. This can only be done when there are enough missiles. To strike Moscow, hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles would be needed so that some of them could reach the target. Zemliany gives the example of the strike on the Mariino command post in the Kursk region in 2024. Russian air defense forces exhausted drones and only then launched a strike with Storm Shadow Scalp cruise missiles. Let us recall that this was the first case of using such missiles on the territory of the Russian Federation. At that time, there were reports of the deaths of Russian and North Korean soldiers. Recall, Ukraine has unveiled a new Flamingo cruise missile with a claimed range of 3,000 kilometers, which has a powerful potential. If even half of the claimed performance is true, this weapon could inflict serious damage in any European part of Russia. As The Economist writes, the process of putting the missile into mass production took only 9 months, not years or even decades. It is also fascinating that the project was led by a management team that, it is noted, had no previous experience in the defense industry. The appearance of this missile in the midst of difficult peace talks may encourage Vladimir Putin to lay down his arms. The article says,
Ukrainian troops have reported a successful operation to destroy 2 key bridges in Russia's Belgorod region. To do this, they used drones worth about $600 and enemy mines that were hidden under infrastructure objects, CNN writes. According to the 58th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade, the bridges were of strategic importance to the Russian army. Ammunition and reinforcements were transported across them. The objects were mined by the Russian military so that they could be blown up in the event of a Ukrainian offensive. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones found caches of anti-tank mines. After that, the fighters carried out a precise strike using tactical FPV drones. The published footage shows powerful explosions that destroyed both bridges. We saw the mines and struck. Then we checked another bridge, it was also mined. We took advantage of this opportunity, said a representative of the brigade. The cost of the drones used was between 25 and 30,000 hryvnia. For comparison, blowing up bridges usually requires the use of expensive high-precision systems, such as HIMARS, where just one missile costs tens of thousands of dollars. Thus, the operation became an example of the effective use of cheap technologies against a much more expensive enemy arsenal. Ukraine has experience in destroying bridges to deter an adversary. At the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, a number of bridges near Kiev were blown up, delaying the Russian advance. Now this tactic has been successfully used on Russian territory, which has become rare positive news for Ukraine against the backdrop of the difficult situation on the front and the constant Russian airstrikes on civilian cities. Moscow has not yet officially commented on the destruction of the bridges.